Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Ursula Pottinga. Ursula is a professional certified coach and founder of Profound Growth, specializing in the intersection of neuroscience and transformational leadership. With over 25 years of international business experience, she translates complex brain science into human centered coaching that helps leaders break limiting patterns. As a founding partner of Be Above Leadership, she co leads an internationally recognized advanced coaching program and is celebrated for her ability to bridge science with spirituality. So, welcome, Ursula.
Thank you, Josh. A great introduction.
Thank you.
I
I,
appreciate
of
it.
course. And I love it because this is a perspective that we don't hear a lot about. And I think it's really interesting to hear about the impacts of neuroscience on
Yeah.
leadership and the neuroscience of embodied change. So, I'm very
Yeah.
excited for today's episode.
Yeah. Neuroscience is my passion. It's the key that unlocks a great awareness, helps us really understand who we are as humans, and even more important, maybe, it also helps us understand other people better.
I completely agree. So, if we can, with that kind of start of the building block, can you explain how neuroscience exists and partners with leadership and culture building and what the neuroscience of embodied change is?
Yeah, I think it's a really important aspect of leadership, especially embodied change. It is my experience that many successful, highly trained, high achievers use their wonderful, smart intellectual abilities that are sitting here and
Mhm.
forgetting that is actually the body that has more access to new information and really helps us to tap deeper into who we are, how we feel, and therefore how we need to monitor and then modify our behavior. Our body gives us 90% of all information. All information comes from the body and then ends up in the brain, where the brain is trying to figure out what does it mean and what are the words for that. So without our body, we're a little lost. And it is interesting to me that leaders really try and figure out problems from their intellectual brains rather
Mhm.
than from their embodied brains, because that is really in this system that we inhabit, that's really where the deeper wisdom lies. So it is really important. It's underestimated. And I think many leaders don't have the skill to really use their body as an instrument for awareness and therefore for change.
I think that's so interesting because I fully agree. I think everybody tries to think their way through things. And like you said, just use this top part, their head, their mind. What are some examples of how people can use their body and embody change as a tool instead of just limiting themselves to their head?
Yeah, so in my work, I talk a lot about nervous system regulation. As leaders, as humans, whether you lead a team, an organization, or you're just leading your life, we need to be aware, what is our nervous system doing? Are we anxious? Are we freaking out? Are we afraid, worried, frustrated? What is happening in the body that has our nervous system either be really grounded and settled or not? Because from this nervous system, either regulation or dysregulation, from there, we take action. So when I am anxious and my nervous system is wobbly and not stable, it is much harder than to be a clear, concise, empathetic, and grounded leader. And therefore, my actions will really be ineffective. The other thing about nervous system regulation that's really interesting is we have something in our brains called the mirror neuron system. And our mirror neurons really help us with empathy and really feeling other humans. And what's really interesting about the mirror neuron system, basically our chemical state, let's put it that way, the
Mm.
biochemicals that get released when we're stressed, that is part of our nervous system, and our mirror neurons can pick up on other people's nervous systems. So we can actually, we feel each other through our nervous system, through our mirror neuron system. So, for example, if you were to go into a meeting and you're all like, it's Monday and you had a great weekend and you're all relaxed and you're looking forward to the meeting and you're going in there and there's 12 people, and all of a sudden you go, oh, there's something weird going on here. Nobody needs to talk about that. Your mirror neuron system will pick up on the stress of the humans sitting next to you. And so it's not only that we need to self-regulate for our own benefit, but if we can self-regulate our nervous system, it will also impact other people because their mirror neuron system is picking up on how we are feeling. So I think as a leader, it is really important because the last thing you want to do is have a nervous impact on other people. You want to bring your regulated self so that their bodies can pick up on that regulation. So it's that mirror neuron nervous system, the impact that we have on others and they have on us is really important. I think we forget that. We forget that we're not an island, but that all the humans around us, in terms of neuroscience, it will impact how we feel in terms of our stomach, our heart, our muscles, just the whole nervous system that we have.
Yeah, I think you're spot on because, as you said, people don't fully realize their impact on others. And I think, again, they just think with their head, their brain, and they think, okay, I may be stressed or anxious, but I'm hiding it well.
Yes, yes.
I've spent so much time being able to hide this. Nobody can tell, and people can tell. And it's
Oh, yeah.
that co-regulation where you're regulating yourself and other people can feel it. And leaders don't understand because normally it's the leader and their entire team. They have this big net of impact and influence on all these people with their
Absolutely.
nervous system.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Totally. And sorry to interrupt.
no,
There's
you're good.
something that just popped into my mind, which is when we ask people, how are you? And people say, oh, good, I'm fine, I'm fine, it's all good. And that assumption that we need to pretend we're good when we're not is actually really bad for the brain. The suppression of emotions increases the stress level and increases the biochemical responses in our bodies. So it's not only that we then can regulate and impact others, but with that suppression, the stress chemical load, it gets more and more. It's a little bit like drip. It gets compounded. When I coach people, one of the first steps to a better regulated nervous system is to name the emotion. When you're stressed, just say it. You don't have to fly off the handle and be all frustrated and angry, but just saying, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I can really feel I'm nervous or I'm worried about this or I'm frustrated about that will already start the calming of the nervous
Right.
system. So people feel, oh, I can't talk about my emotions. Yes, you have to talk about your emotion because they're part of the regulation.
Exactly. And there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. And the
Oh,
first thing I want to touch on is, and I love that you use this word, it's suppression,
yeah,
because so often with emotions and stress and anxiety and all these feelings that people feel on a day-to-day basis, they think in terms of elimination and not suppression. And very rarely, to probably not at all, are you able to actually eliminate these stressful emotions that you feel. What we end up doing is we suppress them, and then it creates more tension and burnout and stress on our body because we're trying to put it away and not do what you said. Put the elephant on the table and say, this is how I'm feeling, whether
yeah.
to myself or to the team, and acknowledge that it's real. And then you learn how to deal with it and move forward with it instead of trying to suppress it and hide it away and have it slowly eat at us over time.
Yeah, and my beloved business partner Anne and I, we often talk about when we do this, it leaks out sideways. I think this is why road rage is a thing. I think these are people who suppress anger in other areas of their
Yeah.
life. They get behind the wheel of a car, somebody cuts them off or is super slow or whatever it might be, and they explode
Mhm.
because they have been holding anger, frustration, or whatever stress they're encountering within the system. And then it just takes one little thing and it's volcanic eruption. It
Right.
is much more effective to name the emotions in the moment because then they don't blow up.
Exactly.
And that is something I had to learn the hard way because I used to be this all good kind of person and suppress, suppress. And then my husband would say one thing and I would go like, "Blah." And so I have learned in the last 25 years when something is happening is to say, when you do this does not work for me. Can we do this differently?
That's definitely good to do because you don't want to have that happen with your relationships, or as you say, behind the wheel of a car is probably not the place you want these emotions to
Not the
just
place.
come out.
No, you don't want that.
No. And you mentioned something else that I think is very interesting is being able to name this emotion in front of yourself and in front of others. And again, put that elephant on the table because it's that vulnerability that people and leaders so often feel like is a bad word these days. And it's a huge negative. I can't show myself being vulnerable. And to some level, you don't want complete vulnerability because then when everybody sees how stressed you are, that may impact everybody else. But being able to say, this is very difficult and it is stressing me out, but I know together we can move on.
Yes.
It gives a name to your feeling and then also tells everybody else in the room that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling,
Yeah.
feel it, and we'll move on together.
Yes, absolutely. And it might also be, and I completely agree with you, you don't want to have a complete emotional meltdown in front of your team or as
Right.
the CEO or whatever you are,
Yeah.
whatever your title is. However, vulnerability is a great role model. You show that it is okay to have emotions
Right.
because we are human beings, not human doings. We have emotions. So it really opens the door to other people's vulnerability. And then in terms of leaders, and I think that's without putting too much of a PR on coaching, but this is why coaching is so useful. Leaders can come to a safe, confidential place where they can talk about their emotions without letting the team know the full spectrum of how they feel. And once that's regulated, then they can go into the world and already feel much more regulated and also then share the emotion, whatever it is, in a more effective and modified state and language, how it's communicated. And if you don't have a coach, go to your best friend, go to someone that is a good listener, that is kind, that doesn't want to fix you, that's just a good listener where you can go, oh, I'm just whatever you are, who can just help you settle this. We use the metaphor of a snow globe. You shake the snow globe and all the snow is flying around. It will help settle the snow globe when you find someone that you can share your emotions with, and then you will show up in a more modified and regulated state for your team. So that's another way of going around it a little bit without suppressing.
You said it right because there are many options for people. And you said it earlier where people feel like, especially leaders, they are this island and they have to deal with everything on their own. And there are so many options that you just mentioned. You can find a peer or a friend, you can find a mentor or a
Yes.
coach, and they become these safe places that you can have very open conversations. And they're in a position where you can do whatever you need to be able to figure out how to regulate your emotion. You can tell them, I don't need any coaching or feedback. I just need somebody to listen, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Or I need you to tell me if I'm off base. Am I overreacting? Should I not be feeling this way? And you now have this unbiased opinion that you can be very open to and not risk doing that in front of your team.
No, absolutely. And this ties into neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to constantly rewire our habitual responses. Because if we keep doing the same thing that is not effective, those neural pathways will get strengthened. And so the brain will automatically go down this super highway of habit. And so when you have a mentor or a coach or a good friend that can also check in with you and say, you are overreacting. What else would you like to do? What would be more effective? It will help the brain go into a different direction, create new neural pathways of more effective behavior rather than going down that same superhighway again and again. So that's another, I think, important aspect for leader to realize. Having this kind of feedback and sounding board is really important for you not to fall into the trap of just this habitual response that might not be useful and effective in this moment.
Yeah, and I think it's so great that you said that because so many leaders, especially leaders who have been in the profession for so long, tend to just sit back and say, this is who I am, this is how I am. I'm just going to be like this. And as you said all of that, it made me tie the parallel to the neuro highway.
Yeah.
of, yeah, this is how they've slowly built up that strengthening that neuromuscle the whole time. And it can change. We just have to be intentional about it or create this support system that helps us go in that different direction instead of the direction we've constantly gone the whole time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. Currently, I coach a leader that's ready to move out and retire and all of that. And he's grooming his successor. And I am realizing that much of the conversation is he wants his successor to be a little bit like him, which I think that's totally normal. It's a comfort zone,
Yeah.
to have someone that's almost like a little clone of yourself. And we need to realize that's just not happening
Mm-mm.
because this other person has other habits, other strengths that have been wired in over time. So we need to, especially these days, we need to really be open to the difference other people bring and look at the gifts, even if it's completely different from who you are. We really need to open sort of our brains and go, that's not how I would do it, but what's good about this way?
Mm.
What is this way that this person is doing? How is that potentially more effective? How can we come together? So we need to be, I think, really in 2026, we need to be more open to the differences that other people bring to the table.
Yeah, it's just going to continue that way, probably faster, and things will continue changing. And people need to be able to have that flexibility. And the leaders these days that just try to surround themselves with people like them, those are the teams that are never going to get anywhere because you don't have that diversity of thought
Yes.
and approach. And I've had this conversation with a couple people because I will always do things my way that support the gifts that I have and my approach. But I also realize that the other people on my team, when I ask them to go do something that I could do myself, it's like when you take a road trip across the United States. If I'm trying to get to New York City, I
Yeah.
may take a certain path to get to New York City, and somebody who works for me may take a different road, a different path.
Yeah.
We're still going to get to the same endpoint. We're still going to get to New York City, but we're going to do it in a different way. And it doesn't mean mine is a more effective path than theirs.
Yeah.
And many leaders need to just accept that fact and move on from it's my way or the highway.
The highway, absolutely. Yeah. And we also talk about generational differences.
Hmm.
Millennials and Gen X's and Gen Z's, they have a different perspective and approach to life and work. And we need to be open to that. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And I think culturally in organizations, we need to be more open to that. I had a conversation with someone else the other day, and what they're pointed out and pointed to, which I thought was brilliant, had never occurred to me. They said it's not only generational differences that we need to be more open to, but also neurodiversity. They were saying that in many organizations, we have people with ADD, ADHD, and they are really trying to cover that up. They're trying to really manage that best they can, but it's often really stressful because how they process information is different from the sort of neurotypical brain. So this person was saying we need to be more aware that there are people who bring neurodiversity into an organizational culture, and we need to be curious about that. So whether it's country of origin or neurodiversity generational, I think we need to really amp up our curiosity about other humans.
Yeah, curiosity is the secret word there because so often, especially some of the previous generations, see the newer ones or see somebody with a neurodiversity and they say, I didn't do that when I started with the company, or I didn't mind working all these hours, or this is where my priority lies. I can't believe that's where theirs are. And it just isn't fair to the individual, and especially somebody who may have some kind of neurodiverse situation
Yeah.
saying that, oh, you need to get over it or put all this extra energy in. They're already expending so much energy to try to deal with their current situation in this world that isn't really made for them. And then on top of it, they have all this energy to try to hide it instead of
Yes.
having the leader be curious, ask questions, and then see how they can support the person and take some of that load off of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really being curious, offering support, and knowing there are a lot of people out there, most likely many more than we expect or
Yep.
imagine. But it's interesting, this is a sort of a side note, but I'm just thinking about it. So I have severe gluten and dairy allergies. And I was saying to my husband the other day, we were invited to an event, and I said to him, since I have developed this last year, so I've gone through life all these years without it, and all of a sudden there was. And it's created a bigger awareness for me, actually, how little the world is set up for any kind of diversity,
Yeah,
if you want. So we're going to this event, and I said, at least if people would ask in the RSVP, please call us if you have a food allergy. At least that would be better. So
right.
now I'm going to this event and I'm saying to my husband, do you think I should eat before we go? Should I pack a gluten-free bread in my handbag? What do you think? And especially when we're traveling, airlines,
Mhm.
airports, there's some airports that are better than others. I don't want to compare my food allergies to the challenges that neurodiverse people have, but it's a little bit like that. Be curious, ask. What do you need? If the leader feels that this person isn't operating at their best, be curious first before you have a judgment, because there might be something going on that you're not aware of.
Especially in these kind of situations, both of the examples you gave where it's not obviously visible.
Yeah,
There are certain situations that are more visible, it's easier to pick up on, but there's
yeah.
a lot of these that they aren't. And being curious is so important because you then get to good intentions if you're not curious. And maybe you do know about it and you try to do something that helps them because you have the good intention, but because you haven't asked curious questions and you haven't asked them what help looks like or asked you what the correct gluten-free meal is, I
Yeah.
could try to do one that I think you could eat and
Yeah.
tell you, don't eat before you come to the event. I have something for you. And then you come here and you still can't eat it because I haven't asked the right questions. And
Yeah,
so
right.
that's why curiosity is so important
Oh,
because if
really?
not, you just
Yeah.
have these intentions that fall flat.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. And I've got hundreds of examples for that. And I think it's, again, going back to having a good mentor or a coach, they can help leaders really create a greater awareness. How open-ended questions, curiosity, instead of the fixed advice, oh, I do it myself. No, here's what you need to do. Stepping away from that a little bit, at least some of the time, and ask these open-ended, more coach-like questions that will really give you a lot more information.
That's exactly right. And I do wonder, Ursula, we focused a lot on the leader itself or the individual. When they
Mm.
see their team going down this path, how can the leader then interject themselves into the situation and help them when you see your team maybe thinking only with their head and not really doing the embodied change aspect that they
Mhm.
could to help themselves?
I think we're going along the same train track, which
Mhm.
is curiosity. You have to figure out what is happening. Either do it as a team in a team meeting or you do it individually. And I also think that I really believe that leaders already have a sense of what might be happening. And this is where embodied leadership comes in. The body of the leader will tell them already. There is intuition, which
Mhm.
is very embodied. The leader, it's my experience, 9 times out of 10, they know something isn't right. They can feel it, they know it. So then going to the individual or have the team together and asking, here is what I've noticed. And I'm wondering what's going on. So tell me about it. Let the team tell you what currently is not working. And don't be afraid that they are not the positive pollies and you make them into negative Nellies. They are just telling you what is a fact. They might say, we have too much going on. We're all stressed. There's too many projects. We don't have enough resources. Listen to that and don't think that their feedback is necessarily based in negativity. There might have data that you're not aware of. So don't think that feedback of stress or anxiety or worry, especially as it relates to constant change, unpredictability is the hardest thing for the brain. The brain looks for safety, and safety is found in having something that's predictable. That is good communication, good meetings, good outlines, good objectives, but also good conversations. The team needs to know when there's something happening that they can't handle anymore, that they can come to you and say, here are the facts. Here's how I feel. and let's find a solution together. And I think you mentioned that earlier on, rather than stepping away from the blame game, is saying, here's a challenge and let's figure out what the solution is. So being really solution, I think leaders can train their team to do that. When I have somebody coming to me and they're complaining about something, it's okay, good point. What do you think is the solution to that problem? I am interested in the solution that you think you have. I'm interested in the problem, but I'm also interested in what you think we should be doing about it. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's so important for the leader to engage with that. And you said it really well about thinking they're just a bunch of negative Nellies when they're coming and bringing up this opinion, because you see leaders go, I don't know why my team isn't honest with me and open about how they're feeling. And then when they are, you're like, why are you all so negative? And why are you on this side of the energy map? And you can't have both. You can't make them feel bad about sharing with you and then wonder why people don't share with you.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. And it is somewhat funny because, it's again, culturally, when you look at a team, safety is the most important thing. And safety is created by being a good listener and
Mhm.
giving credit to all the comments, whether they are coming from frustration or helplessness or really overwhelm. That's just information. Don't turn it into something that it's not, which means that this person is negative. So, yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Then don't be surprised that people are going somewhere else with their complaints. There is this saying, every complaint is an unspoken request. I don't know
Hmm,
if you've ever heard of
I
that, but
haven't.
somebody shared this with me years and years ago. And I thought, oh boy, I never thought about that.
Oh, I like that.
A complaint is an unspoken request.
Hmm.
So people don't know what they want. They don't know what the request is, maybe. And so it comes out as a complaint. But underneath it is something that they're wanting that they might not be able to name or verbalize in that moment.
I really like that. And that's where I think your approach with one, curious questions, and then also being solution oriented is so important because you legitimize how they feel. And you're not putting
Yes.
them in a situation to say, you shouldn't feel that way. You say, it's probably a really legitimate reason why you feel that way, but what can we do about it? How can I
Yeah.
support it? And what do you think we need to go do about it? And then it puts the ownership on them. And then they're empowered to find a solution. And
Yeah.
maybe they can help create the solution to the request that they haven't been able to make. And then this is what's coming out.
Yep, and that will create a new habit. They now know, oh, when I go to this person and I complain, what they're going to say is, okay, valid, but what's the solution to the problem? So over time, you're creating new neural connections in your team members' brains that over time will stop them actually coming to you and complaining. They will come to you and say, here is an issue and here's the solution that I'm thinking of. What are you thinking? And that training in terms of the brain and the habitual changes by empowering others in that way in the long run is going to be really useful for the leader and for anyone on the team. Also, it's great for parenting.
I will take that note for sure.
So, all of you out there that have kids or grandkids, it's a great strategy.
Yes, that's perfect. Ursula, I've loved everything we've talked so far. Before we wrap up, is there any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody?
I think the biggest thing is really use the science of the brain and the body to help you become a better human being. It gives you the evidence why you're reacting or acting in a certain way, and it normalizes everything. You do not need to blame yourself anymore. You can just look at your brain and your body and you can say, there's too much biochemicals in the system right now. This is why I can't focus, or this is why I'm anxious, or whatever it might be. The awareness to how your system works from a neuroscience perspective is a great normalizing and calming in itself when you have that information. So it's a really important aspect of who we are as humans.
I love that. We are human beings and we work with human beings. So understanding the science behind who we are is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
To remind everybody, this is Ursula Pottinga, And she shared the neuroscience behind, obviously, leadership, who we are as humans, and embodied change. I will have all of her information in the posting that I send out and in the podcast information, both on the YouTube page and on all podcast platforms. You can like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast on all the different podcast platforms that we have, to our Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Leading Quarters. And you can email me with any questions that you may have for myself or for Ursula if you want to get in touch with her,
Yes.
or any ideas that you may have for future episodes, or if you're interested in being on a future episode at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But Ursula, I truly appreciate everything. Like I said in the beginning, this is a very different approach to leadership, a different way to think about it. And I'm so glad that we've gotten to talk about it, because it's very rare when you find somebody who has the experience that you do, the knowledge that you do, to make a lot of what we see make sense that we can't necessarily verbalize on our own. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing with us.
And thank you so much, Josh, for this delightful interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me, and have a great rest of your day.